Today we're going to be talking about Mothra vs. Godzilla from 1964. This is the fourth Godzilla movie. We've already done reviews on the first three, as well as The Return of Godzilla and the 1998 Godzilla, so you can go check those out if you want to.
So it's 1964. Godzilla is an established big deal, and Toho said, you know what? It is time to have him face off against nature's biggest threat, the moth. But it's just a first draft. You know, they'd eventually get it right with Batra.
And Mothra did have her own movie already in 1961.
How common was that for a kaiju to have its own movie before it faced off against Godzilla?
As far as a direct face-off, this is the only one besides King Kong, but there were a bunch of other kaiju that were in their own movies or in other movies before showing up in Godzilla movies. And the whole reason for doing another crossover like that was that King Kong vs. Godzilla was so successful, and that was two established monsters fighting each other.
Did that giant octopus ever show up again?
Depends on who you ask.
I'm asking you.
Yeah, well, depends on if it's the same giant octopus. There is a giant octopus in Frankenstein vs. Baragon in the American version, which is Frankenstein Conquers the World, and then there's also a giant octopus in War of the Gargantuas. But are they the same one as in King Kong vs. Godzilla? I don't know.
Does it have a name?
No, it's just a giant octopus.
Lame.
And it was supposed to show up in Godzilla Final Wars at one point, but that movie has enough shit going on already.
Way to drop the ball, Toho.
And when they were thinking of who to have Godzilla fight, since they already did King Kong, at one point they did consider Batman vs. Godzilla, another established Western character. And the idea got far along enough that they actually wrote a treatment in Japan and a separate treatment in the United States, and the one in the US was going to be produced by William Dozier, who would end up making the 60s Batman show, and I have read that one, and it feels like it would have had the same tone as the 60s show.
Interesting.
Which, honestly, I feel like could have fit after the goofiness of King Kong vs. Godzilla. So, we could have had a completely different timeline going on, of reality.
I mean, the Godzilla movies would get goofy as hell anyway, eventually.
Yeah.
This one is less goofy than King Kong vs. Godzilla. This one's directed by Honda,
who directed the first one and King Kong vs. Godzilla.
And then went on to make various minivans and such.
And he also directed the original Mothra, too.
So we start this one with credits over a lot of tumultuous ocean waves, which I initially thought, you know, Godzilla's under there, but it turns out he's not at all.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, yeah.
He's in the dirt, you know, typically where we think of Godzilla.
Yeah, we'll get there. So we actually get Godzilla's full theme for the first time, too, in the intro credits, which we kind of got like a proto version in King Kong vs. Godzilla, but this is where what we think of as the Godzilla theme in its entirety first shows up.
And you're going to have to imagine what that is to yourself, because we're trying to get this video public and not copyright flagged. So enjoy! And the waves are actually destroying a bunch of a reclamation celebration, which is ironic, because, you know, nature's kind of taken over again.
And after everything is done, a bunch of people show up to survey the damage, including two of our main characters, who are a reporter and photographer for a newspaper.
And I find it very interesting that they are rarely referred to by name.
I noticed that too. That seems to be not uncommon, I feel like, in some of these Godzilla movies.
Which kind of helps make them feel more like real people.
There are even characters that show up where you don't find out exactly who they are in terms of what their position or job is or whatever. They just kind of show up. But you get the sense enough to follow what's happening.
And that's opposite to most Western movies at this time, where you would have a character who is so important and are so heroic that they, a lot of the time, single-handedly solve all of the problems, because they're the hero.
Yeah, I very much prefer the Japanese approach. So our reporter is named Sakai, and he's played by Akira Takarada, who was in the original Godzilla, but he's playing a different character here. And photographer Junko is played by Yuriko Hoshi, who we will see again in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, playing almost the same character.
So after all this destruction, the crowd is out to survey the damage, and there's a local politician who is exactly what I picture in a Japanese movie from this era, who is a self-serving idiot.
And we get a lot of those in this movie. He brags about how quickly things will get fixed.
Yeah, I love how it's just like, our shit just got totally destroyed, but I'm spinning it as a positive thing.
Yeah. And then the reporters find a weird thing floating in the wreckage.
My notes actually say weird gross thing.
Okay. It looks like a melted garbage can lid that was spray painted different colors.
And he just picks it up with his bare hands.
Yeah.
And then back at the new station, they receive a report of a monster egg. And there's a dude in the news station who, in my notes, is just referred to as Mr. Egg because he's always eating eggs. And he serves as kind of comic relief in this movie. But after I finished the movie, I felt that comic relief was not really needed at all.
I agree in the sense that we don't need a specific character for that.
Yeah.
Because there is humor throughout the movie, and I feel like that humor works, but the egg guy feels like a bit too much.
Very out of place.
And it's honestly not that funny. It made me think of, because I called him the egg guy, it made me think of the worm guy from the 98 Godzilla, where they keep calling him that as if it's funny, but it's not.
Oh, so a nice little positive connotation there. I like that.
That is not what I would call it, but okay. He's played by Yu Fujiki, who was also the comic relief in King Kong vs. Godzilla, but worked a lot better in there.
Yeah, because that was a goofy movie.
Yeah. And speaking of comic relief from King Kong vs. Godzilla, when all the people are watching the giant egg floating towards shore, we get a cameo by Japanese Don Knotts again, who was the translator in King Kong vs. Godzilla. And I was hoping he'd get a bigger role here, but he doesn't.
As the egg is moving towards shore, the people on land, there's the guy in charge, and he wants to somehow make money because people got to eat. But the way the dialogue was presented, initially I thought he wanted to actually eat the egg itself. I was very confused at first.
Okay. I did really like the one guy that's like casting spells to make sure nothing bad happens or whatever.
Priorities.
Who I also thought would show up some more, but he doesn't. And we get a cool shot from above of some boats heading out to the egg, but then in the very next shot, the boats are much farther away, which is a pretty consistent theme in this movie of effects not matching between shots, unfortunately.
And at this point, we're also introduced to our third main character,
Professor Miura, who is played by Hiroshi Koizumi, who was also the protagonist in Godzilla Raids Again, and was one of the main characters in the original Mothra. But again, he's playing a completely different character here.
So were these actors already typecast to just be in kaiju movies, or were they in other stuff too?
Good question. I mostly watch kaiju movies, so I don't know. Let us know in the comments.
So this dude from the corporation Happy Enterprises, Kumiyama, buys this egg from the village, or from the boating company, or from whoever has claimed it.
And he says he calculated its value by comparing its size to regular eggs.
And just doing some multiplication. I mean, yeah, that's how I would do it.
I like when they say, what's with the weird number for the cost of it? But where did he come up with the weird number for the number of eggs? You know, it's not a rounded number or anything.
He must be really, really smart.
Well, we'll find out later that he is. And Kumiyama is played by Yoshifumi Tajima, who pops up in a lot of these movies, but this is the role that I really think of when I picture him. He's really distinct in this movie.
And our three main characters team up at this point.
For some reason.
Yeah, I thought it was odd that the professor from this point on teams up and hangs out with the two reporters when at first he seemed put out by them, that they were interfering. Then they're all good friends.
Yeah, he's hanging out in their hotel room with them, but they don't have anything to do with each other. And he had a whole team with him, but then we just don't see them anymore.
So he is a zoologist, as we find out. And he seems to have a lot of free time, the fact that he's hanging out with all of these people. So if there are any zoologists watching, can you please explain in the comments why you guys are always so lazy and don't actually do your job?
Like and subscribe.
Because you're not doing any work.
Why are you sitting around watching this video? Why are you giving us the revenue?
Yeah, go classify some bees or something.
And then coincidentally, also at the same hotel, we have Kumiyama coming to talk with his boss, Torahata, who's played by Kenji Sahara, who was the guy who created the super strong string in King Kong vs. Godzilla.
And in this movie, he is just a power broker. So, generic bad guy. And his plan is to build a theme park for this monster egg, even though they have no idea what this egg really is or what's going to pop out of it. He starts construction immediately.
And as they are discussing their plans, the twin Mothra fairies, the Shobijin, request that they return the egg. And if you're not already familiar with Mothra, this scene must seem really weird.
Not to say, the movie's about a giant moth to begin with, fighting a nuclear dinosaur.
Yeah, but I mean these twin tiny telepathic fairies.
Little tiny people running around the room, that's too far for me. Turn it off.
When they first make their presence known, it's just their voice. And Kumayama and Torahata think it must be a spy, and when they go looking for where it's coming from, Torahata opens this cabinet full of money, which, first of all, would let the spy know, hey, here's all the money. And secondly, these guys just got there, but they already have all this money in there, and why do they need it all in there? Plus, it's just the two of them running everything.
Again, generic bad guy.
Yeah, that's true. But it does make me ask questions.
So they're begging for the return of the egg. So let's say the two guys were like, okay, let's give it back. How are they going to give it back? Are they going to kind of push it back out to sea?
That's a good question. I honestly didn't even think about that. And then Torahata immediately tells Kumayama to help him capture the Shobijin, which is another example of kind of the cartoonishness of these villains.
And of course they fail.
Somehow.
The twins appear to have some sort of teleportation powers, but do they? Because later it does not appear so.
Yeah, are they supposed to just be sneaking away, or, I don't know, their abilities are very vague. Even in the original Mothra, they were pretty vague.
Because there's also a huge chunk of this movie where the main characters are carrying the twins around in a lunchbox. If they don't have to do that, they probably don't want to sit in a lunchbox with no air holes.
That's a good point. Maybe they can breathe telepathically or something. Actually, in the original Mothra, they do seem to have telekinetic powers as well. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they can do something. I don't know. And when we see them walking past all the furniture in the room, I thought it looked really good. I was trying to figure out what was props and what was, composite or what, and I couldn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of compositing in this movie, and some of it was really good. Some of it not so much.
Yeah, definitely a mix.
But overall, I was impressed.
Yeah. And Sakai busts in, claiming he thought there must be a burglary in progress, but he gets kicked out.
Yeah, I'd love to pull that trick. Just kick in someone's door, go into their private residence and be like, is someone in here who's not supposed to be here? Let me check.
He then goes back to meet with the professor and Junko and tells them who's behind buying the egg. And I like how when he goes out to meet them, he first does a bird call, but then they just kind of run out into the open. And are just like, hey, we're here.
And then they also see the twins who are up in a tree. So I'm assuming they do have teleportation powers, unless they took the time to climb that tree.
They ask them to return the egg and say that it came from Infant Island, and the professor recognizes the name of Infant Island, but then when they say that the egg is Mothra's, the characters seem skeptical. I would think everybody in the world would know about these twin fairies after the first Mothra movie and about Mothra.
Well, as someone who has not seen the Mothra movie, it was good that they gave me some backstory. So Infant Island was a nuclear test site, and the twins say that Mothra's egg is the only hope for the island. But they don't really elaborate on what they mean by that.
That's a good point. I wonder if they mean that Mothra will protect them from any more what they would see as attacks.
I guess, but we never see anything like that in this movie. And they also say if the egg hatches not on the island, then it will cause chaos and destruction.
As it searches for food. But when we see Infant Island later, we see that it's almost all desolate. So I was wondering what it would be eating on the island.
I was thinking about that. There's some vultures whose diet consists of, 90% bones. And we see a lot of fake bones on Infant Island.
Okay, so Mothra eats bones. Confirmed. Okay.
Put it on Kaijupedia.
And at one point they ask if the characters can hear the people of the island praying for its return. And apparently they can. And we cut to a whole King Kong ceremonial chanting session.
I looked at that as, some kind of telepathy from their end.
Yeah, I assume it was.
And then they point out Mothra, who has just been sitting on this hill right behind them the whole time.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird introduction. You'd think they'd, do something bigger. So our heroes go to the construction site, where things are already well underway toward building the park, and they ask the bad guys to return the egg. And I like how, when they say no, they keep saying that the law is on their side, and that they'll sue them for interference. Which, in the movie, I guess is true. There's no way to prove that the egg is not theirs, or who the egg belongs to. I guess there's no law against, keeping a giant egg that washes ashore.
That dude has a cabinet full of money, so clearly he's going to win any legal battle.
That's true. But the bad guys do seem to know what Mothra is when they bring up the name.
And at this point, the good guys are carrying the twins around in their lunchbox, and the twins also make a plea that the egg be returned. And the bad guys say no to them too.
And they even offer to buy the twins, which I thought was really funny. And I also really like the goofy henchmen that try to throw them out.
So the twins, having been refused by everybody, say, okay, screw you guys. And they hop on Mothra and they just leave. The end.
And I was thinking, Mothra is already there, the adult Mothra. Why doesn't Mothra attack and get the egg back?
How typical. Why don't we use violence to solve the problem?
Well, a lot of this movie does echo the original Mothra, where instead of capturing the egg, they capture the fairies, and Mothra comes to rescue them.
If we don't return the fairies quickly, Newkirk City will be destroyed.
Yeah!
So it's kind of the same situation, but instead of attacking, Mothra just flies away. But it worked last time, kind of.
So the good guys decide, since they can't win legally, to appeal to the court of public opinion, which doesn't really work either. Happy Enterprises fights back with their own propaganda campaign.
What are you referring to?
Here's a bunch of money, shut the up.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, they're called Happy Enterprises. That alone would sway me.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Happy Enterprises guys hype up the egg, asking what will hatch out of it. But people, again, they already know what Mothra is, and even if they didn't know, I would think you wouldn't want to be around this giant egg, not knowing what's going to pop out of it.
I also think, not knowing what's going to pop out of it, it would be a stupid move to build an enclosure a set size around this egg.
That's a good point. I was thinking more about the fact that they're trying to get it to hatch, but I would think, well, first of all, they don't know what it's going to take to make this egg hatch, but more importantly, from their perspective, they're making money off of the egg. Once it hatches, they don't have the egg anymore. So I would think they would want it to take as long as possible, not try to hasten it. Clearly, they're really smart.
Whatever. When you have a cabinet full of money, then you can tell them what to do.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'll never get to that point. It costs more money to make these YouTube videos than what we make from them.
Well, we do have a Patreon. Just saying.
Not that it helps, but please give us money anyway.
Meanwhile, the professor is taking a closer look at the weird, gross thing that Sakai picked up earlier, and it turns out that it's highly radioactive. So, good move on his part to just pick up this weird, gross, highly radioactive thing with his bare hands.
But luckily, they've created these radioactivity decontamination chambers, which apparently fix everything very quickly. Which might explain why people aren't dying from, Godzilla just walking around everywhere. When they go back out to the site where they found it, they don't find any radioactivity.
And it turns out that the Mutos actually feed on radiation, so that's why there's none left.
Don't bring that up. Oh, man.
Now you're putting a clip from that movie. Those are practical effects.
Okay, so what do you think the object was? Because they never actually tell us.
Yeah, I know. That was something that kind of bugged me. That was not a Mothra pun. I don't really know. Maybe a Godzilla scale or something?
Yeah, that's what I thought, that it was a piece of him that fell off.
Because he's in that area.
Yeah, and when we see that it's not the area that's radioactive, it's just that object. And then when Godzilla pops out, they can detect his radiation. I assumed that it was to show that it wasn't the whole area that's contaminated. It's something in the area, and then it turns out to be Godzilla. But it is a little bit weird that you never actually find out. Plus, it doesn't look like, Godzilla doesn't look like he's spray painted like that. So, I don't know. And that politician from earlier shows up again in this scene and tells them to stop doing their radiation experiments. And he says the area is going to be part of an industrialization belt, which was all reminding me of the mayor from Jaws, where he doesn't actually care about, keeping things safe. He just wants the illusion of everything being good.
And at this point, turns out Godzilla's there. He's just been chilling under the dirt, which would have been water before they pumped it all out.
And I like how his tail pops out first. It kind of moves around like a giant snake or something. And I like how he turns toward the people that are watching and shakes the dust off of him. I thought that was cool.
So he starts trashing the whole area. And I thought this was kind of funny because he's a dumbass. He destroys a bunch of stuff by accident just because he's clumsy as hell.
It seems like he gets his tail stuck in that tower. And he's like trying to pull it out. And then the tower falls on him. And this is where we first get the weird, really not good puppet Godzilla. We get a brief flash when the tower falls on him. And even as a kid, I remember pausing it as a kid and going frame by frame and saying, what the hell happened to him? I remember going to my dad and I was like, I don't understand. Why does he look like this? And then he trips and falls into that castle and tears it down and turns to the camera and he's like, I meant to do that.
I forgot he talks in this movie too.
Yeah. And we also there are some long distance shots where you have a toy Godzilla with these long, stiff arms that really doesn't look good. But in the same scene, we get some shots that do look good of the actual suit Godzilla, superimposed in the background. I assume they just went with whatever was easiest, but could have done something better.
So the characters are all freaking out, and they say, hey, why don't we ask Mothra to help?
Well, it's the egg guy that suggests it.
Yeah.
Which, one of two things that he does that influence the plot in some way.
But his suggestion, logically, is kind of dumb. It would be like if someone was drowning and was like, please help me. And I was like, no. And then walked away. And then they somehow made it to land. And then later I needed help and was like, hey, can you give me a hand? Of course they would be like, no, you're a jerk.
Yeah, well, that argument comes up. Even Sakai says that they can't ask for help when they didn't help the Shobijin in the first place.
But then they go out to Infant Island anyway.
Where they immediately get attacked by a weird turtle skeleton. This was another thing that confused me as a kid. And that, again, I remember calling my dad over to ask, what the hell is that? And as an adult, I still don't know.
So was your dad upset that you asked him about it back then and then called him 40 years later to ask him about it now?
He stopped talking to me a long time ago, so after that first time, because I kept bugging him with dumb questions about this movie. Depending on where you look, you will see people claiming that they know what it is or why it's there. And I've seen claims that it's a reference to some, I think, an Italian documentary with a turtle skeleton or something, but it's definitely weird and it's definitely distracting.
And this island is a nuclear test site, but there's all these people living on it, and they seem okay.
Well, that's something that doesn't get addressed in this movie. In this movie, they have them drink something from these cups, and the chief says that it gets rid of the evil spirits in them. And in Mothra, we know that they drank this, some kind of berry juice or something that gets rid of the radiation, which presumably is where the idea for the berry juice in King Kong vs. Godzilla came from, because it's the same screenwriter again.
Must have been an alcoholic.
Well, he was Japanese, so...
Wow.
Yeah, that came out differently than I intended.
Well, let's just offend an entire nation. I like when Sakai was drinking his berry juice and he dumped half of it all over his face. Has he never taken a drink from a cup?
I really liked his acting there, because he clearly doesn't want to drink it, but he's kind of going to pretend that he does, but then he does end up drinking some. I don't know. It was funny. Did you notice that they come to the island in their radiation suits, but then all of a sudden when they're taken to the chief, they're wearing formal attire? Like, did they get dressed off screen? Or were they wearing that under the radiation suits? I don't know. And the natives on Infant Island speak English, at least some of the time, just like the natives on Faroe Island in King Kong vs. Godzilla. I guess that's just the standard native island language.
They beg for help from Mothra and are told no, as they were expecting. Not just for being jerks before, but also for doing all of the nuclear testing in the first place.
Which, it's noteworthy that they just kind of seem to blame all outsiders, because it wasn't Japan doing the nuclear tests, but they're kind of lumped in with everybody else. But maybe also just because they didn't help or they didn't stop it from happening. And the characters try to explain that Godzilla is killing lots of people, but how would the islanders know what they're even talking about? They don't know what Godzilla is.
Please help. There's this monster killing all the people you hate.
But they keep making more and more impassioned pleas, and Mothra suddenly chimes in. And here's where we get some impressive shots of the Shobijin walking along the same ground in the same shots as the humans.
And they sing their song.
For about 25 minutes.
And for years, my father had the twins singing this Mothra song as his ringtone. And it embarrassed the hell out of my mom whenever they were anywhere public. Just be sitting in a restaurant and you hear that song just pop up and everyone look around and be like, what the hell is that?
When the characters are talking to the Shobijin, they're in an oasis that they say is the one part of the island that sustains them. It fits the theme of this movie to show that so much of the island is desolate, but I was a little bit disappointed that they didn't bring back more of the stuff from the original Mothra, because the island was a lot cooler in there. There were carnivorous plants and weird fungal growths and stuff. And there was definitely way more jungle than you see in here. But it does work better for the movie here, and you can assume maybe things got worse over time.
As far as the characters' pleas go, I would like to point out that Mothra is the one who decides to help. If she had not, those people would not have helped. And all of the reasoning that the characters were giving of why they needed help, they just got more and more desperate. They didn't really add any new points to their argument.
I think that's somewhat arguable, but yeah, I get what you're saying. It seems like Mothra, her morality as a god is, higher than man's.
I thought it was funny when Mothra started making noise and the twins were running towards her, and the normal-sized people were following, and they kept losing track of the twins, but the twins are like 3 inches tall, and they're running. How do you lose track of them? Like, where did they go? It's like they can't move that fast because they're 3 inches tall.
Just more of that stuff of how do they keep getting away when they're right there.
We also find out at this point that Mothra is about to die, but a new one will pop out of the egg. So if Mothra leaves, it will not be able to come back.
Which I thought was kind of interesting, too, from the perspective of it being a god, that it's going to die, but then another one is going to come up. Not that there aren't god figures where that is kind of the case, but just interesting. And then we get the military outlining their plans against Godzilla. They say they're going to use artificial lightning generators. So in the first Godzilla movie, they used 300,000 volts to try to stop Godzilla. In King Kong vs. Godzilla, they went up to 1 million, and it worked. It deterred him. And in here, they say they're going up to 20 to 30 million, and that they think it will kill him. I'm sure they didn't actually go back and check the figures from the previous movies, but I thought it was cool that they actually do keep increasing. And it does seem to keep getting more effective. The army starts blasting Godzilla with tanks, and the effects look better than usual because they have actual explosions going off on the suit. And we see our heroes go back to the site of the egg, where the egg guy is there hanging around cooking eggs. Earlier, he said he fled because of Godzilla's arrival, but this is way later, and Godzilla still isn't there. And now the egg guy is there again. Kind of bugged me a little bit.
That's two.
It didn't make the most sense, let me say it like that.
No, you need to put in the bug.
I don't want to.
Then we cut to the two bad guys, and it turns out that one asshole's been cheating the other asshole. And then they fight over money, and then they kill each other.
I was surprised to see so much blood when Kumayama's pummeling the other guy.
Yeah.
Which was pretty satisfying.
Their whole subplot, as far as the bigger narrative, didn't really make much sense. I guess that the, greed ends poorly message works, but it would have made more sense in this movie if maybe one or both of them had funded some sort of nuclear testing instead of just having this kind of unrelated generic greed plot going on. And they're both gone. They don't show up. They're never mentioned again. That's it.
Yeah, for how much importance they seem to have up to this point, I would have thought they would play a larger part in the overall movie. And it's a good thing that Kumayama remembered to wear his money jacket over his regular jacket so he could try to fill it with money.
How you're supposed to do that? People who have cabinets full of money. Explain in the comments.
I was also surprised to see Kumayama get shot in the head with, blood from apparently the exit wound. And Godzilla ends up destroying the hotel, but we just saw him fighting tanks. So was that the whole first part of the military plan? Just shoot him with some tanks and then leave him alone for a while?
Were they trying to direct him to the artificial lightning towers?
I think so, but it seems like it would have worked better for the movie if they had just not had that earlier scene of him fighting the tanks. Because it's so isolated too.
Yeah, it almost seems like somebody said, well, we have to have Godzilla fighting tanks.
And we also see still a lot of people fleeing from the hotel, but I would think they would have evacuated a long time ago. Not when he's literally right about to destroy it.
Well, people are stupid.
Yeah, that's true.
Godzilla has also received the news bulletin about the theme park, so he wants to check it out. But it's not done, so he goes after the egg, and then Mothra shows up. How is the Mothra puppet compared to the Mothra movie?
It moves more in this movie. Like, the legs are moving all around, the head's moving all around. In the Mothra movie, it mostly just flies over New Kirk City, which is basically New York City, and just wrecks things with its wind.
I mean, you got a little more freedom because you don't have the constraints of a human in a suit.
More freedom, potentially, but that could also... it's obviously easier to move something when you're the one moving it inside.
Yeah, but you can have it move in ways that a person's body can't.
Yeah, that's true. I think it looks pretty good for the most part, especially if you compare it to the 90s one or something, which looks very stiff and barely moves at all. Or even the one from Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, that one doesn't move very much either. And when Godzilla exposes the egg from its greenhouse, there's a shot of him staring at it. And as a kid, I thought he was being hypnotized by it. And as an adult, I still wonder if he was being hypnotized by it somehow, because we see it a couple times.
What did your dad say?
I think that was when he walked out. He said he was going to go out for some cigarettes, and I was like, but Dad, you don't smoke. And then he just never came back.
No, I meant when you asked him this time.
He didn't pick up the phone.
But doesn't the restraining order say that you're allowed to talk to him on the phone?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he has to answer.
What a jerk.
That's what he said too. In that one-line letter that he sent me in the mail.
So then we get a fight between Mothra and Godzilla, which is the title of the movie.
We get some cool long shots when Mothra is flying over, and we get some not great effects when Mothra grabs Godzilla's tail and starts dragging him away from the egg.
And there were a lot of shots that were, sped up footage?
Yeah, that's the thing, is the speed at which they're moving keeps shifting between shots.
And it creates an almost comedic effect, an unintentional one. And there was one shot in particular that I felt was straight out of a Three Stooges sketch.
Yeah, I agree. And we get a few shots that are shot at very high speed, which cuts down the motion blur, and it makes Godzilla and Mothra look like they're stop-motion animated, which was interesting.
Yes, that was one of my questions, was if those were actually stop-motion shots.
As a kid, I thought they were, but they're the actual suit and puppet. It's just the way it's shot.
So between that, between using the puppets and the people in suits, seems like there's a lot of experimentation going on here.
And some of it works. Some of it I think looks really good, but some of it doesn't. I think the fact that it shifts so much from shot to shot just makes it distracting. What did you think about the actual fight?
I thought it went on quite a long time. Some things were too repetitive, mainly Mothra making wind and Godzilla getting blown back over and over and over again. I could have used a little more variety, but it wasn't bad.
Mothra doesn't really have a lot in the way of offensive capabilities.
Well, she does grab him by the tail and drag him and stuff.
Yeah, and she uses that poison powder. It's questionable as to how much of an effect it actually has.
Yeah, and how many just people who hadn't fled yet it killed instead.
And she gets taken out pretty easily when Godzilla actually manages to hit her with his beam.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's kind of cool because it makes Godzilla seem that much stronger. Like, like the humans have less of a chance even with Mothra on their side.
Yeah, why didn't they freaking ask King Kong to come back and help? Or King Caesar, or whatever his name was.
There was enough singing in this movie already. If they did any more, the whole movie would have just been singing.
There's got to be a Godzilla musical out there somewhere.
I don't think there is, but that is kind of surprising then.
All right, we're doing it.
So Mothra dies, covers up the egg with her wing, and Godzilla does a victory dance, which is not the last time we'll see him do that.
And the military, who's just been kind of hanging out, says, all right, time for us to come back in. And I liked that it went from day to night. That was a nice touch because it helped add a sense of prolonged time to these events.
And it makes the fire look a lot cooler when they start dropping napalm.
Yeah, I like that shot when his head caught on fire.
Yeah, which was not planned.
Yeah, it didn't look planned.
But it worked in the movie's favor. So they're trying to steer him toward the electrical towers, and we get an awkward jump cut at one point when Godzilla steps on some mines or something. I wondered if that was supposed to be what sets the towers off, or what, or if they're just mines because they don't seem that big.
And the whole time the twins are singing to the Mothra egg.
But when we cut back to them singing to the egg, it's daytime again.
It's a long song.
And the army is still fighting Godzilla in the daytime now, which also helps them to use the same sets, because it's still the same sets as nighttime. But now it looks like he's gone on somewhere else, and the sun's come up again. So the military starts dropping metal nets on Godzilla, and they start zapping him with the electrical towers again, and he actually goes down. And the commander tells them to increase the voltage, ignoring the warnings that it would be too much, which of course causes the towers to burn out, and Godzilla finishes the job by melting them. And then the puppet Godzilla melts the tanks, which again, why not just show the head of the suit? Using the puppet, I mean, you get more mobility out of it, but it just does not fit. And of course, we don't get the shot of the military commander committing harakiri.
We still have people evacuating during all of this. And a boat makes it across this body of water, and this guy runs up screaming, saying that there's an entire class of school children and their teacher that was left behind. And Godzilla's heading that way, so I gotta go save him.
Even though really there's no way to know if Godzilla's heading out to the island. He's still on the mainland, but okay.
And then we show the kids and their teacher, and there's some really, really bad ADR work for the kids crying. Their mouths aren't even moving, their faces are totally neutral, but you hear like, oh god.
Meanwhile, the singing is still going on.
And to finally shut the twins up, the egg hatches. And it turns out to be a pair of worn out leather shoes inside the egg.
And I really like how the characters are initially repulsed and scared. It's like, that's f***ing gross. But then they're like, hey, you know what? That's a good thing. They can help fight Godzilla.
Assuming that they somehow can. I mean, what are they going to do?
Good question. I guess we'll have to watch the rest of the movie to find out. And then the egg guy randomly comes by to tell them about the kids stuck on the island. And then they go and find the guy who was raving about them earlier, and he tells them about the people on the island. It was unnecessary to have two people tell the main characters the same thing. I thought it would have worked better if the characters had been following Mothra down to the shore, and that's when they came across the guy in the wreckage and he told them about the people on the island. Having the egg guy do it makes it sound like other people just know about it, in which case I would think the authorities would be the ones going after them. And even then, there are police around them when they say that they have to go save those people. But for some reason, it's not the police doing it, it's the main characters.
The Mothra things start to swim out after Godzilla, and are somehow able to swim pretty fast, I guess.
And we get the weird decision to have the fairies singing and the Godzilla theme playing at the same time.
Yeah, it's called a mashup.
It didn't work. The Mothras reach the island, and at one point we can see the wheels under the puppets.
Those would be cool little toys. They ever made little Mothra slug toys that move on their own, like wind-up things?
And the stupid kids and their stupid teachers go into a cave to hide.
The Mothras encounter Godzilla, and at one point we get a nice Benny Hill moment when one latches onto Godzilla's tail.
And at one point we can see the holes in the neck of the Godzilla suit that the suit actor would use to see and breathe. It adds to that sense of realism. It really feels like there's a guy inside that suit. I really believed.
Okay. I don't want
The Mothras start spraying Godzilla with webbing from their mouths, just like real caterpillars do. And I thought they did a pretty good job of tag-teaming him with hiding behind the rocks and popping out and having the other one distract him and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was good.
I also thought it was impressive that Godzilla's atomic breath is able to turn rocks into rubber.
Yeah, that just deflate.
On fire, even. An interesting idea, but I don't know if I feel that it worked.
I mean, couldn't they have gotten something that would legit have melted instead of using a balloon?
Yeah, why couldn't they have just poured lava onto the set?
Exactly.
It's Japan. Just shoot in a volcano.
Eventually, Godzilla gets so wrapped up that he just falls off a cliff.
Never to be seen again.
Yeah, this was the last Godzilla movie until 1998, when America took the reins and said, fine, we'll do it.
We'll show you how to do it right. And meanwhile, the main characters find the kids and the teachers. And they said there was one teacher, but there seems to be at least two. And they get them out. I guess the other one didn't matter.
Oh, she was probably an assistant.
Yeah, not a real teacher. Okay.
Yeah, she doesn't count.
The characters get back to the mainland, and they wave goodbye to the Mothras and the Shobijin as they swim away.
Back to their nuclear fallout site that they call home.
And then we get our moral of the story, that humanity should learn to live in peace and harmony.
The only way to really thank the Mothras is to make a better world. A world based on mutual trust. And since 1964, we have done nothing but that. Good job, humanity.
That's a message to all of you viewers that give us all those dislikes.
They can't anymore.
Well, they still can, it just doesn't mean anything. Or it means even less than it did before. That's right, your opinion is completely insignificant to us. Like and subscribe. And that's Mothra vs. Godzilla. This is one of the most popular Godzilla movies, most highly regarded, and I definitely think it's one of the best ones.
And coming off of the goofiness of King Kong vs. Godzilla, I didn't expect it.
Which was also good, but in a different way.
Yeah.
And like we said, there is a lot of humor here, but it's humor that works within the world of the movie. And part of what people like about this movie, including me, is the way the military really seems to have a plan that makes sense, and actually even works, up until that dumb commander pushes it a little too far. We haven't seen this elaborate of a plan to stop Godzilla before. How did you feel the characters worked in this movie?
Outside of Mr. Egg and the big buildup of the villains, I think everybody else worked. I thought Junko was set up for more than she turned out to have, because at the beginning, she kept getting chastised by Sakai for, her artistic framing and stuff, and he was like, just take the damn pictures. And she had all of these inner deep thoughts and stuff, but that didn't really go anywhere because she made just as an impassioned plea to the Islanders as the rest of them.
That's true. I do think it makes them more likable characters, though. They gave them more personality.
Yeah. I thought the professor, especially compared to the scientific minds of other Godzilla movies, didn't have nearly as much to do here.
Yeah, he's the one that I was probably most disappointed with in terms of his actual involvement. If you had left him out altogether, the entire movie would still be the same thing, other than the part where he finds out about the radioactivity of whatever that thing was they found.
Yeah.
And they could have just as easily have had the characters go back to do another story on the progress of the, repairs, and then have Godzilla pop out anyway.
Speaking of Godzilla popping out, I thought the whole Mothra angle, because Godzilla doesn't even show up until, 30 minutes in.
Yeah.
I thought the whole Mothra angle was strong on its own. And Godzilla kind of just popping out of nowhere just to, make it a Godzilla versus whoever movie didn't necessarily need to happen.
That's true. Like I said before, this movie borrows a lot of its plot from the original Mothra, and in that movie it was just Mothra. It does feel like they took that same plot and just kind of moved things around a little bit and then threw Godzilla in. And when Godzilla shows up, it does go in a different direction. It does become more of a Godzilla movie at that point than a Mothra movie. I mean, he becomes the focus. Like, we have to find out how to stop him. And even Mothra's involvement at that point is just, we need Mothra's help. But I do think it works. And there aren't any points in the movie where it feels slow or boring or padded out or anything like that, even with all the singing.
Yeah, I agree.
In contrast to, American Godzilla movies, for example, where all the characters feel like they're super boring and dull and you don't give a shit about what's happening.
And they single-handedly save the day.
Yeah, these characters, they get Mothra's help, and that does end up, saving the day, but it feels like it works here. It feels like it makes sense. And then the stuff at the end with them having to go rescue the kids, that feels like something that's kind of tacked on to say we still need to have the characters involved somehow.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't make sense at that point for these characters to be the ones going out to rescue them. So that feels like more of an American thing. But of course, in an American movie, it would have been, we need to go set some explosive on Godzilla's foot or whatever and knock him into the ocean or something. Actually, that's too smart. It would have been something dumber than that. But, something along those lines. The music definitely stands out in this movie. There's a reason these themes keep popping up in other movies. And that Mothra theme does come from the original Mothra. But the rest of the music in the original Mothra is very different from the kind of music you get in a Godzilla movie. It's not Ifukube doing the music. It's Yuji Koseki, and it's very different. And even the fairies, and here they just speak English the whole time. Or, well, actually, no, they speak Japanese. Either way, they speak just normal language. In the first movie, when they first speak Japanese, it's kind of like, we didn't know you could talk. Before that, they spoke in these weird, electronic tones that were really strange. They were definitely weirder in the first Mothra than they were in here. And I do wish they had kept a little bit more of the weirdness from the first Mothra in this movie. But it's weird enough having, again, those twin fairies with telepathic powers and whatever, worshipping a giant moth and using it to fight a giant dinosaur and everything. So I can't complain too much. So I do think this is one of the best Godzilla movies. It's definitely one of my favorites. And unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, in the Showa era, this is the final movie where Godzilla is the outright bad guy.
At the beginning, it wasn't his fault. He was just tripping and stuff.
That's true. I mean, I thought about that. He doesn't really have a whole lot of motivation. He's just kind of wandering around. But for this movie, I think it works. He's a danger just by his existence.
So thanks for watching.
So remember, the next time you see a butterfly,
start singing to it.
I was going to say kill it before it causes all this destruction, but I don't know.
Well, they talked about, they said if this thing catches, it's going to be chaos and destruction and shit. But it wasn't really. Godzilla caused all the chaos and destruction and shit.
Yeah, the egg hatching was nothing but a positive thing.
So they were just liars.
The true villains exposed. Okay.
Got it.
So there you go, folks. We're giving you the true way to see this movie. You only get it on this channel.
Well, that's what people do now. They take established stories and they say, well, actually.
I could not tell you how much that irritates me. People reading into things that are not there, and Mothra is actually about alcoholism. Which, again, I've made multiple allusions to that, so I could make that argument. My dad leaving while I was watching it. Godzilla stumbling around, all the signs are there.
Yeah.
It takes place in Japan.
I still don't get that. What do you mean by that?
It's just Japanese people drink a lot of alcohol.
I did not know that.
It's just like a big cultural thing.
Okay.
I swear I'm not just being racist. There's also something to it.
Oh, man. Yeah, so Mothra vs. Godzilla is really about alcoholism. There you go.
Thanks for watching.
Please let us know how this video changed your life.
And if you need help, go Google it, because I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Go talk to a moth.